So welcome to day three, day three of our spring session. It's such a treasure to be able to practice in this way, to be able to separate ourselves just for a little while, from the habits and make up our lives, because it puts things in such sharp contrast. We can see where we're led astray, where we're living in a story, yeah, and probably hasn't fully loosened its grip yet. But you can see that there's an opening, there's a possibility that we can become a little bit more proactive, that we can become a little less reactionary, and a little more responsive to things as they are as we start this practice, or as we continue this practice. So I wanted to talk to you about another koan in the Mumonkan, in the Gateless Gate. Same book that we referred to yesterday. And these 49 cases are the first cases that a Zen student would go through once they finish their precept study and were on a path of formal Zen training. And as I'd mentioned in the past, koans are really meant to cut through to the heart of our lived experience. And I think we get a little confused because we think, well, I'm living my life every day. Yeah? But it's amazing how little of our lives that we're actually open to, and how much we rely on that repository of our conscious ideals, of our memories, to actually fill in the gaps of our lived existence. We walk along, something doesn't go quite the way we expect, and so we have a little gap, right? And we say, I've got that. I remember a few years ago I had this, and I'll put that right in its place. And there, look, now the story remains the same. Story is continuous, yeah? The only problem behind the offering we're doing right is your life there. So when we close off to our lived experience in this way, it's kind of like a meditation period where you hear the bell ring, yeah, and you wonder where all the time went. And that's just not, we want to, as the remembrance go every single day, we want to take heed and not squander our lives. And so this is case 28 in the Mumonkan, and it's called Ryutan's Name Echoed Long. One day, Tokusan kept asking Ryutan for instruction until nightfall. Ryutan finally said, "The night is late. Why don't you go to bed?" Tokusan thanked him, made his bows, raised the door curtain, and left. But seeing how dark the night was, he turned back and said, "Hey, it's pitch black outside." So Ryutan lit a lantern and handed it to Tokusan. Just as Tokusan reached for it, Ryutan blew it out. And at that, Tokusan came to sudden realization and made a deep bow. Ryutan asked, "What have you realized?" Tokusan replied, "From now on, I will not doubt the words of the old master who is renowned everywhere under the sun." The following day, Ryutan ascended the rostrum and declared, "There's a man among you whose fangs are like trees of swords and whose mouth is like a bowl of blood. Strike him, and he won't turn his head. Someday, he'll settle on top of an isolated peak and establish my way there." Tokusan brought his sutra commentaries and notes to the front of the hall, held up a torch and said, "Even if you've exhausted abstruse doctrine, it's like placing a hair in vast space. Even if you've learned the vital points of all the truths in the world, it's like a drop of water thrown into a big ravine." He then burned all his commentaries and notes. After making his bows, he left. And so koans are so big, you don't even know where to, you know where to turn the apple around to take the first bite. Yeah? It's not always helpful to know the backstory to a koan. Sometimes it can actually create more issues than you solve. But on this one, it's interesting to note that Tokusan, we meet several times in the Mumonkan, as well as the next set of koans in the Hekigan Roku, or the Blue Cliff Records. What's important to note about Tokusan is he is considered to be a Diamond Sutra scholar. And so in his youth, he studied extensively, and when he went on pilgrimage, he would carry his copies of the sutra and commentaries wherever he went. Only they weren't bag books back then, right? So he needed a chest, or even sometimes a trailer, to pull these documents behind him. And it's remarked that one time Tokusan took one of these little trips, and along the way he got hungry. And so he stopped at a concession stand, and there was an old woman behind the stand. And he said, I'd like something to eat. And he named off a foodstuff in particular. Roughly translated, the foodstuff means point to the mind. But even that's superfluous. You don't even necessarily need to know that. But the interesting thing is that the woman looks at him and says, I see you. Diamonds. Oh, a pretty big deal. The woman says, great. All right. I'll get you.
Excuse me. You go on and off the sound of your voice.
Okay, just a moment. It's possible. Mm-hmm. We're going to replace the batteries. Right? Yeah. This is so in the future when there's koans about these events, we can say, and then the batteries went dead, and he was fully enlightened. You know? How's that? Okay. So now we know there's no battery indicator. You just got to be mindful and replace the batteries from time to time. And so she looks at Tokusan and says, I'll get you that thing you want to eat. Only I have a question for you. She says, past mind cannot be caught. Present mind cannot be caught. Future mind cannot be caught. So tell me, with what mind are you going to eat the snack that I give you? At this, Tokusan was shaken, and the texts are remarkably silent about whether he got what he wanted to eat from the old woman. But one thing was very clear to him. He said, there has to be a master of renown here when old women who are peddling foodstuffs are quoting and asking questions from the Diamond Sutra, because that's where that reference was from. And here he was a scholar of the Diamond Sutra. So he inquires around, and he asks, is there like a Zen master somewhere around here? And they said, yeah, Ryutan is here. He's not far from here, a couple miles down the road. Ryutan means, it's a combination of two Japanese syllables. One, Ryo, meaning dragon, and the other, Tan, meaning deep water. So we're looking for this person with deep, profound abilities, right? But also the prowess of a dragon. So now Tokusan's even more. His interest is piqued fully. And so he goes to this monastery, walks in, and says, so I heard there was a dragon and some deep, deep, still, profound water here, but I don't see either one of those two things. And Ryutan appears and says, now you have Ryutan. And that begins the relationship. And so now we're kind of joining in the middle of things, right? And Tokusan is spending all night long picking the master's brain about his appreciation or understanding of the Diamond Sutra until the master is just beat. And he says, hey, we're probably going to need to get some sleep, which is probably the most profound teaching that was taught all day. And Tokusan picks up on it. Says, okay. And then he casually walks outside, walks back, and then goes, the only problem is it's really dark outside. So Tokusan says, yes. And he lights a lantern, and he hands it to Tokusan. And when Tokusan turns to leave, he blows it out. And then Tokusan has a great enlightenment. What did Tokusan wake up to? It's amazing sometimes how we think we understand what's going on around us. And we play this game all the time. I can name that tune with 3 notes. And the song begins and we say, I know exactly, I can fill in the rest for you. But we don't actually appreciate the song that's playing. And we skip over the things we consider mundane or simple. And we're always looking for this deep, profound truth that's behind, right? And meanwhile, the story of our lives are going on right behind that story, rather, that we're weaving about our lives, unfolds. And we're plugging around in the dark, thinking we have a lantern and we're seeing everything brightly. When you wake up, you don't always wake up to the most profound teaching that's there as you thought it was going to be. Sometimes you recognize that if you're not paying attention when you walk down the sidewalk, you'll stub your toe. Or you'll actually stub your toe and you'll know what it feels like to truly stub your toe. These aren't the things that that we can just gloss over. The content of our lives, if we open to it directly, wisdom emerges from the most simple things that we do: washing the dishes, drinking tea, recognizing for ourselves, right, whether the coffee is warm or cold. This is the great enlightenment. So what's interesting is every time we have a koan, usually the follow-up question to the student is, what was the content of this great enlightenment? But in this case, Ryutan beats us to the mark, right? So he asks the student, okay, well, what did you see? You woke up. What was it that you saw? And he says, from now on, I will not doubt the words of the old master who is renowned everywhere under the sun. Who's he talking about? So Ryutan, right, is supposed to be this great master that he sought out for the Dharma, right? And I think even some commentaries point to Ryutan, him extolling the virtues of Ryutan. That's not who he's talking about. It's talking about the one and only master that you can actually refer to. Your own true face, your essential nature, who you truly are. This person can do miraculous things. On command, can raise your eyebrows. Can command you to smile. Can have you pick up a glass and taste its contents. The full master of your life. Indistinct from the river that flows. When we look and we see the water flowing, we're not seeing something outside of ourselves. We're recognizing another piece of our essential nature. Without distinction, without breaking it up into pieces, so it's easier for us to remember. Right? All the different fragments of the mirror. When you assemble the mirror from all the fragments that you smashed up, it can look a little fuzzy. It's better not to break it in the first place. Just to appreciate it as it is. And so he comes to recognize that, right? And going forward, won't doubt the words of the old master who's renowned everywhere under the sun. And then we have the Magnificat, right, from Ryutan, who attends the rostrum and says, hey, there's a man among you whose fangs are like trees of swords and whose mouth is like a bowl of blood. Strike him and he won't turn his head. Someday he'll settle on top of an isolated peak and establish my way there. Who's Ryutan pointing to? Is he pointing to Tokusan? Or is he spurring on everybody who's present to have that exact same recognition? Yeah? Yeah. This is something that's available to all. And the way he's referring to, it's capitalized in the text. This great way. In this great way, there is no distinction between self and other. Every one of us can establish that way, and does establish that way. It's just a question as to whether or not you're awake to it. Yeah? Or whether you're too busy trying to describe what you see. You know, he's out taking pictures, right? But never actually appreciating things directly. So Tokusan then, in a state of pure bravado, lights that fire, right? And he brought his sutra commentaries and notes to the front of the hall, held them up and said, even if you've exhausted abstruse doctrine, it's like placing a hair in vast space. Even if you've learned all the vital points of all the truths in the world, it's like a drop of water thrown into a big ravine. He then burned his commentaries, made his bows, and left. So the koan points to a great truth here, right? And it's important that we actually make, look at where this is pointing rather than what the words are saying. Yeah? Is there any value in having commentaries? I'm sitting here right now reading a case from a koan collection that was assembled in, I think, 1250, right? So whenever we see through a koan, see through the eyes of a koan, we're looking at the same thing that's been glimpsed through countless generations of folks from Japan, from China to Japan, here now into the United States. Yeah, we're all glimpsing, we're all breathing through the same lungs and sweating through the same pores, seeing the same great truth. But it makes no substitute. We're going to come here, we're going to spend some time in retreat. There's going to be a temptation. You'll see. Right now, you're probably still saying, I wish I could go back to my habits, right? But towards the end of this retreat, the energy is going to shift. And we're going to say, I wish I could never leave this container. Yeah? But this is a pointer. This is a preparation, right? This is a way of gathering yourself so that you are ready to pour your whole heart back into your life. Yeah. Not your whole heart back into the story, but the actual lived experience out there. And to the ones who are looking to you for guidance. Especially that one you call yourself. So it's important to use this time wisely. Sitting long, sitting hard, and seeing that face. The true face of who, not the one who you wish you were, or you hope you will be, but that one who you actually are. Because you're perfect just as you are. And you could use a little improvement. Yeah? So just spend this time looking closely at those judgments, looking closely at your thoughts. And what happens when you put those to the side? What's right behind it? Sometimes there's sadness. So if there's sadness, what do? You cry, yes. Wow, now you're talking. Yeah, we're all penetrating these koans, right? Everyone here has great mastery. Yeah? Yeah? And then you put one foot in front of the other and find the next person who's stuck in a dream and who is crying, right? And you help them. Because you recognize that it's all a part of your essential nature. Yeah? You find why you're put here on this world, yeah? And you be that one. You can't be anyone else anyway. So you might as well make the best of it, yeah? What is this bringing up for you? You grab the microphone. Yes. You're willing to, you can hop in on the conversation online too, if you like. What does this bring up? Yeah, is it on? She should be able to hear you.
I think what I've been struggling with is really understanding of how I'm acclimating to this experience, but I'm constantly going already in the future.
Yeah.
And I can feel it and say, how do I bring this back home and make sure it moves?
Yeah.
And I have to constantly grasp myself back during meditation, say, stay present.
Mm-hmm.
I'll refocus on something happening, whether it's chimes or the birds.
Yes. Yes.
But I feel it constantly, just always in the future.
Yeah. Zen Master Valerie, right? As you've accomplished the way. You know, there's this old, there's a belief that happens as a part of coming to meditation practice where we say, I'm going to sit long and hard in the hopes that I'll wake up. The very act of coming and sitting is awakening. There's no distinction. This practice and enlightenment are two different concepts. It's like space and time. They're unified. Yeah? And so just like when we sit, the beginner's instructions are come back to the breath when you get pulled astray, right? So in the grander scheme of your life, just come back to your sitting. Come back to right where you're standing. Yeah? So, and you're always standing in exactly the right place. And the great master is always right there with you, yeah? Ready to give instruction. Just tends to gesture rather than speak in words and concepts, yeah? If you're thirsty, drink. If you're hungry, eat, yeah? If someone's throwing something at you, get out of the way. Duck. Yeah? Yeah. What else?
Watching the ego and thoughts go by and not attaching to them, and also recognizing that it isn't personal,
Mm-hmm.
and that it's not personal when others use their ego,
Mm-hmm.
and that's in front of me. It's not personal.
Mm-hmm.
So reacting when necessary is important.
Yeah.
Don't take it personal.
It's just your opinion, man. Right? It's just there. It's just not this is not you intrinsically. Yeah. One of the most powerful things that happens when we first start to practice is we recognize that we can become meta-aware of our thoughts. In other words, I can look in at the content of my thinking, right? If I just change my vantage point slightly, ever so slightly, I can look into my thoughts. And at first you say, well, that's not extraordinary. But it brings about a big problem because you think you are those thoughts. So if you're not those thoughts, then who are you? Yeah, that's the koan. Who are you? This is the face. This is the face that Tokusan got a glimpse of. Yeah. When the Buddha held up a flower and twirled it, and Kashapa saw it and was awake, yeah, that's the face he glimpsed at. Yeah.
This thing's brought up a couple of thoughts for me. Isn't it interesting that our language gives it away? We even say, I think, whatever. So, I'm thinking,
Mhm.
what am I?
Right.
Right? But we get so caught up in it that we don't even realize that our own, like there's an awareness behind how we interact day to day. The second thing that I thought we were just thinking about not attaching to my own ego or someone else's, being able to kind of look at it and go, oh, that's not about me. I don't need to take that personally. And that relates to what you were saying about the song. Well, I hear 3 notes and I go, okay, I know exactly where this is going. Okay, you just started that argument. If you have any close relationship with anybody in life, you can clear that you had an argument over because
It doesn't happen here.
because that's what we do. We say, aha, you played those 3 notes. Let me fill in the rest of the song.
Right.
Instead of taking a minute to step back and go, oh, what's coming up here?
Do you hear that? Because I hear it. Do you hear it? Isn't that song? Oh, I don't think I like that song very much. Why don't we just, let's just let that song play. We don't have to latch on to that one, yeah. A lot of broken records, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know what Jumpin' Jack Flash, how the song ended, because the copy my father had a skip where he says, with the wind going through my hair. And that was all, going through my hair, going through my hair. So when I heard it on the radio the first time and I heard hair, I was like, oh my gosh, that's how that verse ends. Yeah. Because that's your life, that continues on past the skip. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a quick question. You put the word I think, right? And what I guess does this practice encompass feminine versus masculine energy? Are there any elements of it? Because I think, I feel versus I think.
Yeah.
That's something that I've been.
So essentially what we would say essentially is that's a distinction that you're making But that being said, just because you made it doesn't mean it's any less real. So in other words, when we sit here and say, hey, that voice that you hear in your head isn't you, you go, oh, okay, well then we'll just get rid of the voice. No, no, no. The voice is still there. The voice is still there, but now it's in context. You realize I don't have to attach to that voice. So, say, well, man and woman, is there a distinction? Well, of course not. And yeah, both are true. So, yeah, there's a lot of schools of Buddhism that go on to talk about these different energies, but even in the Chinese culture that was rooted in yin and yang were there, right? So absolutely, and being skillful about working with that is a part of actually being open to it. It's like one of those things where they say, well, there's no distinction. That's a lie. That's a lie, right? It's all the same. No. Yeah. By definition, if you're saying it's all the same, that it's different. You're coming up with this idea to try to unite, but that's not the viewed experience. Now, if you say, therefore, anytime I see this, a woman, therefore these things apply. No, then you're confused. Then you're confused. Or I judge this by that. But to say, it's one of those strange things. What is a woman? Can you define it? I don't know, but I can tell you when I see one generally. Generally. So it's just we need to be aware that this is just because we make judgments. We're not saying don't recognize that there are judgments there or push we're saying put the judgments to the side. It doesn't mean to erase them. Just be aware of both. Yeah? And if you take a step back and you're actually seeing how everything works together, something comes up from that, and that's wisdom. You can realize I don't need to be attached to that viewpoint, but that viewpoint is present. Yeah? That's how you transcend it. You don't transcend it by eliminating it, because what will you do in its place? You come up with a whole new set of standards. My new standard is I don't make judgments. Right now I've got a whole new worldview, and that doesn't work either. It doesn't work either. I've just made my first judgment about judgments. Yeah, and now what happens? Heaven and hell open up again. Yeah, because anytime you make one judgment, everything is divided, and everything falls on one side of that scale. Just be open to what.
I have a question about judgments.
Mm-hmm.
In your talk, you mentioned at least twice the word appreciation. The way I understood it, you were saying you are really not in your life, not in your reality, in the most even ordinary things. And so, go back to reality and appreciate. Isn't that some form of evaluation? If not, it's not a judgment, but it's
It's a good catch. So what you're watching me doing is attempting to modulate the way I'm using contrasting concepts to point away beyond concept, right? So I could, I'm trying to say there is a form of evaluation here. There's a form of judgment, but I'm trying to say point to something beyond it and accept everything within the realm. How do I? It's like now playing charades. I'm like, I know. Yeah. I start going through all the signs to try to point right beyond it. So appreciate is more of a don't pull one close and push one away. Try to keep everything within that view. But even that doesn't work, right? Because that's a judgment. So again, when we're talking about these things, we cannot contain, you cannot wake up, you can't be enlightened to the sutra. You have to be enlightened to where the sutra is pointing. A koan doesn't give you insight into the koan. gives you insight into your life, right? Words and ideas and concepts, when used skillfully, point to a place beyond words, ideas, and concepts. That's why poetry is so powerful, right? You use all these, comparing and contrasting pictures, right, to try to get to something just beyond what can be expressed. What's actually being expressed isn't contained in the definitions of any of the words, but the way they come together and contrast is meant to put a picture that's much larger than the words and the concepts being used. So but yes, you're right, and it's a very astute observation. That's the kind of thing where you need to say, I trust less in what's being said and more in where this is pointing. Yeah, that means you're getting it. That means it's working. The tingling means it's working. It was the old Denorex commercial, yeah. All right. Deep, deep water, yeah. All right, dragons. It's time for lunch, yeah.